Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Bouhairie and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome, everyone, to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Bouhairie.
And I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thank you guys for joining us once again in what is going to be a special edition of the PBC Podcast, as we're going to tear into Saturday night's big event, pay-per-view on SHOWTIME, and in the main event, a battle of two undefeated world champions. Gervonta Tank Davis moves up two divisions to challenge WBA 140-pound world champion Mario Barrios, and the undercard is pretty damn stacked as well. I mean, arguably the best card this year on paper. Before you lay a single bet down, you don't want to miss what we have to say. And of course, we're going to look back at last weekend's action, including the return of Jermall Charlo. But first, Mike, a reality check for those that say boxing is dead. A recent Harris poll of American adults found that boxing is fourth among 8 sports included in the poll in terms of popularity. Now, boxing was behind only the big 3, football, basketball, and baseball, but ahead of MMA, hockey, tennis, golf, soccer, and car racing weren't included. Mike, what were your thoughts on this?
Well, it doesn't surprise me. We've seen similar numbers in the past. I think because non or casual fans don't see it every day on ESPN or wherever, where the NFL, NBA, and baseball dominates the news pretty much every day. They think there isn't much boxing going on and that nobody's watching when it is on TV or being streamed. It's just not the case. And the fact that 1/3 of the people polled said they were boxing fans says a lot. If we're a niche sport, I believe we're a really strong niche sport.
Yeah, exactly. And I think back about what Steven Espinoza, the president of Showtime Sports, told us when he was on our podcast, when he said, one, that the whole boxing is dead thing has been going on for nearly 100 years now. And also, it seemed like that was part of the UFC marketing campaign, was to say boxing is dead, boxing is. So a lot of people just repeated that, but that, clearly is not the case. I'm not surprised. You look at the demos, you look at the amount of money the big fights generate, and you quickly realize that this sport is big business. Now, speaking of big business, it is time to move on to the PBC Fight of the Week. I told you guys it's the summer of PBC, and what can I say? The dominance continues Saturday night, SHOWTIME pay-per-view beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern time. One of the best cards this year, if not the best, and one hell of a main event. Unbeaten, 2-division champion Gervonta Tank Davis moves up to 140 pounds to take on undefeated Mario Barrios for Barrios' WBA title. You can expect a full house at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, and we're going to kick off this breakdown with the essentials.
Okay, here we go. Barrios is 26-0 with 17 knockouts. Davis 24-0 with 23 knockouts. They are combined 50-0 with 40 knockouts. Obviously, both guys are 5-0 in their last 5. Barrios has 4 KOs in those 5. Davis has 5 and 5. One thing I think that maybe slipped past people, Barrios has knocked out 9 of his last 10 opponents. Last fight for Barrios, Ryan Carl, KO 6. That was last October. For Davis, it was KO in the same round against Leo Santa Cruz on the same card. Barrios, 65% knockout ratio. Davis, 96%, which, I can't say this for sure, but I think it's the best in boxing. I don't know anybody who's got a knockout in any fight right now. At any rate, if he's not there, he's close. Barrios, 131 professional rounds. Davis, 85. They're both 26. They both turned pro in 2013. Barrios fights from an orthodox stance. Davis is a southpaw. Here's where there's a bit of an edge for Mr. Barrios. 5'10" in height. Davis is 5'5.5". Barrios 71-inch reach. Davis 67.5. I don't know if either one's going to make any difference, but there it is. Barrios is from San Antonio, and Davis is a product of Baltimore.
Well, we're going to get into the size difference in a minute, and it is sizable. Actually, let's jump into it right now. I mean, Davis is moving up to 140 pounds, and that is the story of the fight. How big a factor is size in this move?
It could be a factor. It reminded me that guys like Lomachenko and Roman Gonzalez, maybe Luis Neri, seem to sort of hit a wall in terms of size, were sort of like diminishing returns as they went up in weight. That could happen to Davis. He's never been in with a 140-pounder. Can he take the punch of a legit junior welterweight? Can he hurt one? I think these are legitimate questions going into this fight. Now, if you ask me whether I believe that they will be a factor, I would say no. I think Davis is an excellent boxer, and he'll carry at least most of his power at 140 pounds. So just stay tuned. We'll see how it plays out.
Well, he's always had that power advantage over his opponents at 130. Could Davis actually be stronger at 140 because he won't struggle to make weight?
Yeah, that was my thought. It's definitely possible, although I doubt that would manifest itself in terms of his punching power. The easier it is to make weight, I think, the less difficult a camp is for a fighter. I'm guessing he's been able to focus a lot more on strategy than shedding pounds. I think he'll feel strong and fresh coming into fight night.
Yeah, I think so. Honestly, I don't think he didn't struggle to make 130 his last fight. In fact, he was super strong and got stronger as the fight progressed against Leo Santa Cruz. For that one, it looked like he did everything the right way, and that's what he plans to do going forward. What advantage does Davis have in this fight?
Well, I think because there's so much focus on his power, and we should be focusing on his power, which isn't basically his main thing. His ability might be overlooked to some degree. I think he's a special, super quick athlete with a strong skill set on top of his ability to hurt his opponents. I think he's better than Barrios across the board, although I have a lot of respect for Barrios too. He's a good all-around fighter who can also punch. I just think Davis is better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's got the advantage definitely in power, pound for pound. We'll see how that plays out. Which leads me to my next question: are people putting too much emphasis on size here and not talking enough about what Barrios can do in the ring? I mean, he is a good boxer.
Right. As I said, that might be the case. Obviously size is the one advantage he definitely has. Davis is moving up to his weight class. And but on top of that, Barrios is good, though. There's a gap between the ability of Davis and the ability of Barrios, in my opinion, but it might not be as big as some people think. He has a real shot at winning these fights, maybe relying mostly on the size advantage, but he's also a really good fighter. He's just in with a really special fighter.
Yeah, and I think that's how folks are looking at it. It's crazy, but if Tank wins, he would have beaten notable opponents, top opponents, at different weights in 3 consecutive fights. How big of a deal is that?
It's sort of old school, isn't it? Like it makes me think of guys like Henry Armstrong. He's a guy who'll campaign in any division near his natural weight, depending on the opportunity at hand. And I think you have to be really good and at least somewhat disciplined to do that. He's probably more disciplined than people give him credit for. Going up and down could bite him, maybe in this fight, but it's certainly an impressive run.
Yeah, absolutely. It's dangerous, but look, I think it's a huge deal. I think it's the very definition of pound for pound. I mean, honestly, I feel he should be on pound for pound list already, but what do I know? If he defeats Barrios, he definitely should be on pound for pound list. Now, before Mike and I make our predictions, we're going to rate each guy in a series of categories from 1 to 5, 5 being the best. Mike, let's start with their amateur foundation.
Okay, I give Davis a 5 and Barrios a 4. They both started as kids and had long, productive amateur careers. Davis was a reported 205 and 15 as an amateur, so I just imagine that he was really a dominating amateur.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I think that without question, I give Davis a 5. Him being an amateur was how he was discovered. I mean, he was well known. I think it was Adrian Broner who first found him and brought him to Floyd Mayweather and said, you got to get a look at this kid. And Floyd was wowed as well. So, I mean, you can see the foundation. It's not like Tank has had that many fights as a professional. I think he had only 16 fights prior to fighting for his first world title. So clearly his amateur foundation is up there. I would give it a 5. Now Barrios, I would say I would give Barrios a 4. That would be, or perhaps that's too high, Mike. What's your take?
Yeah, I gave him a 4. I did my research. Actually, I wrote a story on Barrios a while back, and he started fighting when he was like 6 years old or something.
Well, he
like
came from
that.
a fighting family.
Yeah, his mom brought him to the gym when he was 6, and I think he turned pro as a late teen. So he was an amateur for more than 10 years. I think he had a real strong amateur career. So that's why I gave him a 4.
So, but you would give Tank the edge there.
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's move on to just their overall skill set, and we'll start with Tank. Where do you have him, 1 to 5?
Well, this kind of goes back to what we were saying before. So Davis is a 5, and I'm going to give Barrios a 4 here too. Davis has special gifts. There just aren't many guys like this. Just God-given, and plus he's refined them, over the years. But Barrios also is a polished all-around fighter. So a 4 is not disrespectful here. A 4 is a very strong grade. 5 generally reserved for guys who are special, which I think is what Davis is. Yeah,
both are excellent fighters. I give Tank a slight advantage. I would say 5 over 4, just okay, like you. But it's closer than I think people realize. One thing that these guys both do exceptionally well is go to the body. And I'm wondering if that's going to be a factor in this fight, particularly for Barrios, giving his natural size advantage. What about speed and athleticism? 1 to 5.
This is, I don't want to paint Davis as some sort of god, but I have to give him another 5 in this category. I give Barrios a 3. Again, Davis has natural advantages over almost any opponent that he could possibly face. Barrios is probably quicker and more athletic than some realize, but no, not very many are in the class of Davis. So I'm going 5 and 3.
Yeah. I think Davis absolutely is, in terms of speed, a 5. In terms of athleticism, I would say more so a 4. I don't think his foot speed is as exceptional as his hand speed and his quickness. And I would give Barrios a 4, for both speed and athleticism. I think his hand speed is a little underrated, and so is his athleticism. He's a naturally talented kid, no question, and he's been able to outquick opponents, get there first with his power shots, and we'll see what he does against the fighter moving up. Now, what about punching power?
5-4 in favor of Davis again. We'll see if Davis carries his power to 140. I mentioned this earlier. Barrios has stopped 9 of his last 10 opponents. Yeah. The guy can also punch. So enough said there. Both guys can hurt the other guy.
Yeah, I think in terms of what we've seen so far from Tank, he's a 5. In fact, he's a 6 out of 5 based on what we've seen so far. However, we have not seen him at 140 pounds. I mean, we don't know if his punching power is going to carry. Now, you look at someone like Barrios, who has knocked out 9 out of 10 opponents at 140. You got to give him a 5 there. No question. He's in the upper tier when it comes to punching power in that weight class. What about overall physical strength?
So this is, I think, where you have to, at least going in, you have to give this edge to Barrios. I have Davis at a 4, Barrios at a 5, because they're fighting at 140. This is Barrios territory until Davis proves he belongs there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have a 5 to 4 for Barrios. He's a naturally bigger guy, and he's shown himself to be much, much stronger at 140 than he did in the lower weight classes. We just don't know what Tank has at 140 yet. He did have that one fight at 135 against Yorkis Gamboa, and he didn't look too strong, too powerful in that one as he had in other fights, so who knows. Let's move on to the next category, versatility. Who is the more versatile fighter, and where would you rank them, 1 to 5?
So I give Davis the edge here, 4 to 3. And the only reason I didn't give Davis a 5 here is he doesn't have much, like the best jab in the world. Maybe he does, and he just doesn't use it that much. He uses it more of kind of like a rangefinder. So maybe in that sense, it's actually a pretty good jab because it helps set up his power shots. But otherwise, he's just an offensive machine. He just lands every punch you could think of, to every part of the body that's legal. Brutal body attack. And he's a good defensive fighter given how aggressive he is. He's actually very difficult to hit cleanly. And I just see Barrios as a guy who's just solid across the board. He doesn't really have any weaknesses.
No question. I think that in terms of versatility, I've heard Mayweather Promotion CEO, who the outfit which promotes Tank Davis, just wax poetic about Tank's boxing ability and that we haven't seen everything that Tank can do. Now that may be true, but we haven't seen it yet. I'm going to give Tank a 4 as far as versatility, and I've got it even both at 4. Barrios's trainer Virgil Hunter also extols the virtues of Barrios's boxing ability, and we have seen that in spurts, but not at an elite level. So I think both have a lot to prove when it comes to that. What about durability?
I give both guys a 5. This is kind of hard to gauge because we don't really know for sure if they've been stung or hurt at some point in their career. But I surveyed their records, and I don't believe either guy's ever been down in his professional career, and I think that's an indication that both guys are pretty tough guys.
Yeah, they are. I don't know if they've truly been tested in that way, so I give both guys a 4.
Okay.
I don't want to put them in that category just yet, and maybe we get some answers on Saturday night. How about experience?
You got to give an edge to Davis. He's still young and he's still, building his resume. So I'm not going to give him a 5. I'm going to give him a 4, and I'll give Barrios a 3. Davis has already fought 6 former or current world champions, which is a lot for a guy his age. I believe that Davis is the first major title holder on Barrios' resume, but he's faced some notable guys, just not a major title holder. So this is a big step for Barrios, as if I'm stating something that's not already pretty obvious. It's a huge step for Barrios.
I'll tell you what, I've got it 4-4, and I'll tell you why. I agree with everything you said, and the reason I have Davis at 4 is because of everything you just said. Fighting more past or present world champions, but here's why I've got Barrios at 4 as well, and that's because we've seen him tested in the ring. We've seen him in trouble. We've seen him have to dig deep, and I think that's a great teacher. So in that aspect, I think he does have a lot of experience in the ring. He knows what it's like to pull it from the fire, as he did against Batir Akhmedov when he knocked him down in that 12th round, and seemed like he was in trouble up until that point. So I'm going to call that even. Now, here's an interesting category: freshness. Which fighter is fresher, and how would you rate them?
I give them both a 5. They're both young. Neither one of them has been in like a lot of taxing brawls, the kind of thing that wears down, breaks down a fighter. I think both of them have plenty of tread left on the tires. They're almost like new tires as of now.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I give both a 5 here too. Plenty more to come in their careers. Now, their respective corners, and boy, do they have some big names. Gervonta Tank Davis, obviously Calvin Ford, the respected Calvin Ford, is his lead trainer. And what can you say about Virgil Hunter, the legendary trainer of Mario Barrios? Who has the advantage there, and how would you rate the corners?
Well, you just described both guys, as I had planned to. I'm going to give both guys a 5 in terms of their corner. Calvin Ford has done a terrific job with Davis, obviously, and Virgil Hunter is going to be in the Hall of Fame sometime very soon. He's one of the best, maybe one of the best there's ever been. So so they both have really good trainers.
Yeah, fantastic. So when we add this all up and take a look at everything here, where do you rate these guys? How do they end up?
I have a real quick question. So I combined speed and athleticism into one category. Did you do that? Because I wanted to be consistent with our scoring.
Yeah, I would give a 4.5 for Tank.
Okay,
that's what I would give. So okay, give a 4 for Barrios because I've got Tank 5 at speed and 4 at athleticism.
So my totals are, so this is out of a possible 50. I give Davis a 47, which I actually, in a kind of a weird way, seemed kind of high in the end for a guy who's so young and still developing, but that's where I landed. And Barrios got a 41, which is interesting, which I think is very strong still for a guy that really hasn't had a fight at this level before in his career.
Well, I think that sounds about right, though. I mean, that's sort of how the odds makers see it now.
Yeah. Well, so what were your totals?
I've got Tank at 45.5, and I've got Barrios at 43. So a slight edge. I think still a lot of unknowns, and so many variables here when you have a guy moving up 2 weight classes like Davis is doing. So we'll see how that plays out. And it is time for us to make our predictions. Mike, you go first.
Okay, so my prediction will not buck the totals that I came up with in the analysis. I'm pretty sure that Davis is a better all-around fighter than Barrios is, although, again, Barrios is good. He's very good. Davis is just special. And I'm going to assume that he'll be just as effective at 140 pounds as he's been at lower weights. I doubt he'll take out Barrios with one punch like he did against Leo Santa Cruz. But he'll probably break him down and stop him around round 8 or round 9.
I like that prediction. I like Gervonta Davis to put on a show Saturday night. I like him to stop Barrios in round 10. I think it's an extremely dangerous fight for him, but I just think that Tank is special. And that's what his team seems to think as well. We've seen flashes. He does some things that are just so impressive in there. And you know what? I haven't forgotten how Barrios struggled with the shorter southpaw in Batir Akhmedov. And so Davis, who I think is a couple notches above Akhmedov, should be able to seal the deal, put on a great show. He's got to be very, very careful, especially when Barrios goes to the body. But it's a big risk to go to Tank Davis's body and to bring yourself down to his height. So I think it's a great matchup, and I'm looking forward to a great fight. Now the co-feature, this might be better than the main event. Two of the world's best at 154 pounds, former world title challenger Erickson Lubin taking on former unified champion Jason Rosario. Mike, is this version of Lubin, who's riding high right now, a better fighter than the one that was stopped by unified champion Jermall Charlo in 2017?
Absolutely. That was a big setback, but he obviously has regrouped well, winning 5 consecutive fights since the loss and looking good along the way. I thought he looked sharp against both Nathaniel Gallimore and Terrell Gaucher in his last 2 fights. Both those guys are tough opponents, and I thought he looked good. As you said, he is on a roll right now.
Yeah, he really is. And I think that all of those things those were the kind of fights he needed before he fought Jermall Charlo. So I'm in agreement with you that he's certainly a better fighter. Let's talk about Rosario. I mean, he's experienced the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows in 2 fights. I mean, he had the huge KO win over Julian Williams and then the huge KO loss to Jermall Charlo. Which fighter is the real Rosario?
I think that Rosario is a very good, physically strong fighter. You don't do what he did to Julian Williams if you don't have the goods. I just think he's a level below Jermall Charlo, as is everyone else in the division. I don't think people realize, honestly, collectively, I don't think people realize how good Jermall Charlo is. Rosario is a solid boxer and a really good puncher. I won't be shocked if he looks more like he did against Julian Williams than he did against Charlo in the fight that's coming up.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. And he gave Charlo some problems. It wasn't all that easy for Charlo. He did give him some problems and certainly applied some pressure. So I wouldn't be surprised at all. But, Lubin is hot at the moment. Rosario not coming off that KO defeat. Is momentum a factor in boxing?
I think it is. Athletes are at their best when they're in grooves, when they're hot. And I think Lubin is in a groove right now. That obviously isn't the case with Rosario. He's coming off of just a brutal disappointment. And as I've said, those kind of losses aren't always easy to bounce back from. Now, Lubin did it. We'll see if Rosario can do it.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the thing for Lubin, though, is that he sort of worked his way back up there slowly, whereas Rosario's jumping right back in there with another tough fighter.
Might be a mistake.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Do you think it's a mistake, though? What's your prediction for Saturday night?
Yeah, I do. I'm not sure if that's the key mistake. I mean, he just might not be as good as Lubin. I'm going to go with Lubin, even though images of the Rosario Williams fight keep dancing in my head. Again, Lubin is the hot guy. He's looking good. I say he wins a competitive but unanimous decision.
It's such a dangerous fight for Lubin. I mean, Jason Rosario hits so hard. I was talking to Derek James about it a week ago, and he said, man, that dude right there, I mean, he and Jermall can attest as to how hard Rosario hits. And so it's a huge risk, and it says a lot about Lubin that he's stepping in there with him. He wants to prove that he deserves another world title shot, and I believe in him. I like Erickson Lubin to stop Jason Rosario somewhere in the middle rounds. I think that he's the better boxer. He's going to move some, and he's going to set him up, and then he's going to take him out. We'll see what happens. I don't know if it steals the show, but I think we're going to see explosion on this card. Now, I wanted to mention two other fights as part of the event as well. Batsir Akhmedov, who we mentioned earlier, gave Mario Barrios an extremely tough fight in 2019, losing a decision. He faces the experienced former world champion Argenis Mendez in a 12-round super lightweight bout. You don't want to miss that. And then just announced today is, unfortunately, Julian Williams had to pull out of his bout versus Brian Mendoza with an elbow injury. In place of that, Carlos Adames, the 154-pound contender, is going to take on Alexis Salazar in a scheduled 10-round fight. We can't wait for this card, and we can't wait to talk about it next week on the podcast. All right, it's time for the week in review, and what a week it was for undefeated WBC World Middleweight Champion Jermall Charlo. It started out with he and his twin brother Jermall being honored by the mayor of Houston. Charlo, of course, returned to his hometown of Houston to defend his title at the Toyota Center versus the hard-hitting Juan Macias Montiel. And what a great fight it was. I saw someone on social media say that was the most entertaining one-sided fight I've ever seen. Charlo won I'm sorry?
That's a good way of putting it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it sure was. I mean, Charlo won a wide, unanimous decision, and rightfully so, but it wasn't easy at all, as he certainly would attest. Mike, what were your thoughts on Charlo's performance?
Well, we agreed last week that if he didn't turn in an absolutely perfect performance, that he'd get criticized in some circles, and that's pretty much what happened. Listen, the guy defeated a tough opponent by a near shutout decision. That's a good performance by any standard, no matter what anybody says, right? Yeah. At the same time, we now have great expectations for Jermall Charlo. Every time he steps into the ring, he almost has to look perfect. I'm not even sure if that's fair, but it's kind of the way it is. His inability to take out Montiel, and the fact that Montiel actually had his best rounds, I thought, in the last third of the fight, sort of fed the doubters out there, if you will. I thought it was an excellent performance overall by Charlo. Maybe not a great performance. I'd give him a B+, which is a really good outing.
Yeah, I give him a B+ as well. I think folks are sort of overlooking what Montiel did. And we tried to tell guys last week that, look, forget the loss to Jaime Munguia. That happened at 147. I spoke to Samson Lukowicz, Montiel's promoter, who said that immediately after that fight, they were like, this kid needs to move up. And he didn't just go up to 54. He went to 160. So he was way out of his depth at 147. And he showed improvement in subsequent bouts. And look, he had a 3-month camp for this guy. He had a great camp by all accounts. And I don't want to get too much into Montiel. We'll touch on him in a bit, but certainly he was prepared for the world champion, and he was up for it. Now, that said, a lot of people were expecting Charlo to deliver a knockout. Should he have been able to stop Montiel?
That's always easier said than done. As you mentioned, Montiel was about as fit as he could possibly be. He's also, I think, just a tough guy. He took some big shots in the middle round, survived them, and just kept on coming. I suspect he'd be a tough out for anybody in the division, to be honest with you. To answer your question, I mean, yes, he probably should have found a way to end the fight. And I have to be honest, I have to add this here. I don't think this is controversial. I don't think Jermall is a huge puncher. I don't think he's as big a puncher as his brother, for example. He's a good puncher. He's a solid puncher, just not a great puncher. And I think that's fine. I mean, all you have to do is look at his record to know that what he's doing is working perfectly well.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, should he have been able to stop Montiel? Well, I tell you what, the bombs he landed on that dude would have stopped a lot of guys.
That's true.
Montiel is just a tough customer, and that's what Charlo pretty much said afterwards. Speaking of which, what did you think of Charlo's post-fight comments?
Other they were just perfect. You give the guy credit for surviving against you, for performing well, and then you move on. That's what he did. I think that's part of his evolution as a fighter and as a person. He just always kind of does the right thing, says the right thing. I was really impressed by what he said.
Yeah, he's a total professional. Let's talk about Montiel. I mean, guy was overlooked by a lot of scribes and fight fans, and then comes out there and we saw what he did. What was your take on his performance?
I thought it was a bit strange in a way. He didn't really give himself much of a chance to win the fight because he wasn't active enough, I thought. I mean, unless he was counting on stopping Charlo later in the fight or something along those lines. According to CompuBox, Charlo threw 769 punches, which is a lot of punches, by the way.
It was a career high for him.
Yeah, right. It's a lot of punches. Montiel threw 427. It's about half as many. A little bit more than half as many. Montiel proved how tough he was, though, and he showed a lot of fire, I thought, in the later rounds. He probably didn't hurt his reputation much in that fight. I'll say that.
Yeah, for sure. I think he definitely increases his reputation, and I think he deserves another notable fight or two based off this performance. What about Charlo? What's next for him?
So that's a tough one. After the fight Saturday, he said he wants to stay at 160 for now and unify, which means he'd have to find a way to get one of the other title holders into the ring. That won't be easy, but as we've seen many times, anything's possible. And there are the 168 pounders if he changes his mind and goes that direction. I'd love to see him fight David Benavidez or Caleb Plant, depending on how things play out. Or maybe he gets Canelo, at some weight. In the meantime, maybe you see him get, maybe he and, his handlers are going to have to get a little bit creative to find him an opponent to get excited about at 160.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that a top opponent would bring out the best in Jermall Charlo. So I'm hopeful that we see him against one of the fellow champions, a Gennady Golovkin or Demetrius Andrade next, or perhaps move up to 168. I think if he does go up to 68, I can't imagine him jumping right into a fight with Benavidez or anyone like that. But, a solid opponent setting him up for a big fight at 168. I mean, look, Jermall Charlo to me is, like his brother, one of the best fighters pound for pound in the world. I really don't understand how he's not on those lists. Again, I recall Gennady Golovkin being on pound for pound list as high as number 3 or 4, even before he fought Danny Jacobs, when his best win was like Martin Murray. He was on pound for pound list.
That's a good point.
Jermall Charlo has knocked out, flattened Julian Williams, defeated Sergey Derevyanchenko as far more decisively than anyone has over Derevyanchenko, wins over Matt Korobov, Austin Trout, on and on and on. And this guy can't sniff a pound for pound list. So the standards are really wonky out there. And look,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think he's on some. He's on mine.
I mean,
I think with Golovkin, I think people got caught up in the knockout streak. I think that contributed to his thing. But you're right. You know what? Sometimes the pound for pound lists just get wonky.
It is. It makes no sense, and it's probably why he's like, I'm going to stay here and unify and try and unify. Hey, work for Golovkin, and see what I can do. But if he's not able to get those big fights, I'm with you. I hope that he goes up to 68. Lots of great fights waiting for him up there. Now in the co-feature, lightweights Isaac Cruz and Francisco Vargas got it on. I mean, great back and forth, but of course, Isaac Cruz, he's just a fighter on the rise, Mike, and keeps improving and keeps showing different facets to his game, winning a comfortable decision over Vargas. What were your thoughts on the fight itself?
Honestly, I was a little bit disappointed. Vargas didn't really want to engage as much as he has in the past.
I don't blame him, though.
Yeah, I was just going to say, which is understandable given all the wars he's been in. But that's sort of. I thought it was just going to be an all-out war, and it just wasn't that, because that's not what Vargas wanted. And the fight got kind of dirty, especially with the collision of heads as many times as that happened. It wasn't a horrible fight by any means. It just wasn't the barn burner I was hoping for. You just never know how things are going to play out in boxing. Sometimes fights you think aren't going to be great turn out to be great, and vice versa.
Yeah, and you know what? I understand where Vargas is coming from. I think he felt the heat and thought better of engaging in a firefight. Yeah. Yes, it kind of reminds me of when Eric Morales fought Manny Pacquiao the third time. and we just didn't see the level of performance that we had seen in the two prior fights, and you could just tell he couldn't muster up what he had done in the past. What was your take on Cruz's performance?
I thought he did pretty well. He controlled the fight and he won by a wide margin, which is the main objective, right? I thought he won 8 of the 10 rounds, which is a dominating performance. That was a good win. I guess my main criticism, if that's what it is, I'm not even sure this is criticism, is that things just got a little too rough. I know people are out there saying that he fought really dirty. I hope he learns from that fight that he needs to watch his head. If he doesn't, that kind of thing could come back to haunt him, down the line. Keep it clean. You're a really good fighter, strong, powerful guy. You're a good fighter. You don't need to go down that road. Just keep it clean, and I think he's going to continue to roll.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, some of that stuff looked brutal. Hey, look, I wasn't in there. I don't know what happened, but certainly I know what it looked like from the outside. And quite a few people were complaining about dirty tactics. What was your take on Vargas's performance?
Well, I would say it was so at best. I just thought he didn't do enough to give himself a chance to win. He tried to box at times, but he really didn't get much done doing that. And I thought Cruz generally got the better of inside exchanges, although there was so much, it was kind of hard to tell. There was so much wrestling and grappling and this and that. That takedown was one of the hardest tackles I've seen, in this football season.
Yeah, it got me ready for the NFL.
Right. Vargas, Vargas looked to me like a guy who won't be fighting much longer, which might be the wise way to go, particularly in light of the way the fight ended. That was just
well, speaking of the way the fight ended in that brutal cut, which I'm trying to erase from my memory, what were your thoughts on the referee's decision to allow the fight to continue in the final round after that gruesome cut over Vargas's right eye?
Yeah, I thought both the ref and the doctor handled the situation poorly. I get the thought process. There's only 30 seconds left. They wanted to give the guy a chance to win a decision. They can't know what was on the scorecards. So they figured, okay, 30 seconds left, he'll be fine. But one, I've never heard a referee encourage a doctor to allow a fight to continue. I'm not sure that's his job. And it seemed to me that the doctor made the wrong decision. That was a massive gash. I kept wondering if just the right shot would have caused like serious damage. But listen, as you said, I think when we started this conversation, I wasn't there. I wasn't standing in front of Vargas. That's just my impression from a distance. I don't know. It just seemed off.
Yeah, I get it. There were 30 seconds left, and so he's like, well, let's just let the fight end. But as you mentioned, that was a really bad cut. And I tell you what, he took some heavy shots in those last 30 seconds that made me second guess that. And you're right. I mean, who knows what could have happened? It would have been like sending Vitaly Klitschko out for a couple more rounds against Lennox Lewis with that gruesome cut.
It reminded me of that. Yeah, I thought
I mean, there were 30 seconds left, and I get how maybe they were like, well, there's just 30 seconds left. But there was just 30 seconds left. Just stop the fight. What's next for Cruz following this performance?
Well, I'm sure he thinks he's ready for a title shot, and he might be right. He's ranked by 3 of the 4 major sanctioning bodies, as high as number 3 in one of them. I think he's in line for a title shot. He's just going to have to wait a little bit longer and continue to win. In the meantime, maybe he fights. I was trying to think of guys that I could see him fighting. Maybe he fights a guy like a Richard Comey, who keeps coming up as potential opponents. Maybe Robert Easter. Right. I don't know. Yuriorkis Gamboa. A guy sort of at that level, just to keep him busy, and keep him in the conversation. But he's going to have to wait a little bit longer. But I think eventually it's going to happen for him if he keeps winning.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he should wait a little longer. I think they should continue to refine his skills and so forth. Maybe Rolando Romero, that's one name I saw in boxing Twitter that was thrown about. That's certainly good. Would be a fun fight. I also like the Richard Comey fight, of course, for him. But I think that sort of that level before he steps it up against the very elite in the division. Now, the night opened up with an incredible fight, incredible battle between 2 top 122 pounders. Angelo Leo, the former WBO champion, taking on Aaron Alameda. Leo winning a decision over Alameda in what was a fight that probably could have gone either way. Mike, we'll talk about the decision in a second. Let's talk about the fight first. What were your thoughts?
I thought it was a good competitive fight. I was a little surprised by Leo's inability to wear down Alameda, and even though I shouldn't have been, I was surprised by Alameda's boxing ability. I won't make that mistake again. Anyway, it wasn't a thriller, but I thought it was about as evenly matched as as any fight could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you in terms of the fight. I think Alameda really surprised me. I mean, Leo did what Leo does. But man, Alameda's a very good boxer, and he showed some strength in there too that I wasn't expecting. Let's talk about the decision, Mike. A majority decision. Leo won 96-94 on one card. A second card had it a draw, 95-95, and then out of the blue, Judge Ava Zaragoza had it 98-92. Do you think Zaragoza was watching the same fight the rest of us were?
Apparently not. I thought the result was fine. I scored at 95-95, but I thought 96-94 either way would have been acceptable. Maybe, I don't know, maybe one more round for one guy, I don't know. But 98-92, which is 8 rounds to 2 in favor of Leo, I thought was beyond the pale. That kind of scoring always upsets me because I see it as sort of an insult to the loser. Alameda in this case, there's no way that he lost 8 to 10 rounds. He just didn't deserve a 98-92 score. I keep thinking, I hope officials in Texas go over her card with her and determine what went wrong so something like that doesn't happen again. Yeah,
absolutely. And I feel like cards like that actually hurt the winner. In the case of Leo, he fought a good fight against a tough top opponent and edged it. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. But then you look at that card and, fans start booing the card and in turn booing Leo. And
that's true. That's what happened.
Right. The judge doesn't get the brunt of the bad press. It's the fighter that typically does, that has to answer questions about it. It's almost never the judge. Speaking of Leo, what was your take on his performance?
Well, given Alameda's ability, it was pretty good. I thought it took a while for Leo to figure out Alameda, and I'm not sure he ever did really figure him out 100%. But he settled into enough of a groove to pull out the win. I'm used to seeing Leo break down his opponents with with his punch volume and his body work. That hasn't happened now in 2 fights. I'm not sure what to make of that. Maybe he's plateaued a little bit, or maybe he's just run into 2 really talented, tough guys. He lost to Stephen Fulton before this fight. I think it might be that. I think he's just moving up now to really elite guys, and it gets harder and harder.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Leo who fought Stephen Fulton could arguably beat anybody else at 122 pounds. And we saw what Alameda did against Louis Neary. He boxed extremely well in that fight, and there's no question that that carried over, that he continued to work at his craft. And I have a feeling that was a big step up for him. I have a feeling that fight gave him a lot of confidence heading into this one, and we saw it. What were your thoughts on Alameda's performance?
Now, I think he arguably landed the bigger, more eye-catching shots, especially those uppercuts. He landed a bunch of uppercuts. Yeah. And I was impressed with his ability to limit the damage Leo could inflict on him, which is not many guys have been able to do that. I think it's fascinating that he probably enhanced his reputation in consecutive losses, but that's what he's done. He's a very, very good boxer, and he's a tough guy, and I think couldn't be more obvious.
Yeah, and there's no question that sooner rather than later, he's going to surprise somebody or notch a big victory himself. Was this a step forward for Leo and Alameda?
You have to say yes to that question. Leo won the fight, which puts him a step closer to another title shot, which obviously that's what he wants. Now he's in a very, very deep, very competitive division. It's not going to be easy for him to climb back to the top. It's not just going to happen. I don't think it's going to just happen overnight. There's too many good fighters in this division. And as far as Alameda goes, I think he's proved that he could hang with an elite 122-pounder. Now he just needs another shot, and he has to have his hand raised the next time.
Exactly, and I think he will. He's certainly shown that he deserves one more shot against a top fighter, and I think obviously Leo's in line for a world title shot. Now, also, last weekend. Unified World Bantamweight Champion Naoya Inoue continued to show the world that he is indeed one of the best fighters, stopping Michael Das Marinas in 3 rounds with amazing body punching. Mike, a lot of folks feel Inoue is better than Canelo Alvarez pound for pound, and I must say the more I watch him, the more I'm inclined to agree.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Because you know how I feel about Canelo. I thought Inoue looked absolutely terrific, which is just typical of him. The guy he fought is a solid guy at best, but Inoue just looked like a monster, which is his nickname. Those body shots were beautiful and brutal at the same time. I'm surprised that Das Marinas was able to take 3 of them before the fight was stopped. I mean, Inoue is he's just a killer. The speed, the power, the ring IQ, I can go down the list. I really believe that you can argue that he's the best fighter in the world. You know, I actually wrote this. I said, everybody's kind of has a different take on pound for pound. For me, the way it's evolved is who would win if weight wasn't an issue? If like suddenly everybody in the world was exactly the same size, who would win the fight? And are there people out there who really think that Canelo Alvarez would beat Naoya Inoue if and that would be a good fight, obviously, but do they really think he'd beat Inoue in a fight? I mean, I don't know if I would pick Canelo. I think I might pick Inoue. Same with Crawford. I think Inoue might be the best fighter in the world. There's a couple other guys I put in the same class where I sort of wonder.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and that's exactly what I was thinking of after last weekend's fight. Look, I know Michael Das Marinas. I saw him when he fought just Plange, and they fought to a draw. Plange was robbed in that fight, and Plange, while a good fighter, certainly isn't a world beater, so he's not at that level. But I tell you what, Inoue did what he was supposed to do against a fighter of that caliber, and that was take him out with no issues whatsoever. I mean, he's just a special fighter. He's got every skill in the book. I mean, he's scary good. Exactly. I mean, he's scary good. And you talk about overall skills, man, the guy's got it all. I don't know if you saw, I saw a video with Tank Davis talking about him. And he was like, he was in awe. He was like, did you see?
I think, so I think everybody's not. One thing that I don't think people talk about enough is, he had a tough time against Donaire. All these guys who have their orbital bones broken, they all have to stop immediately because it's too painful and it's too dangerous. Inoue had his orbital bone broken, but he kept going, and he won, and he beat a future Hall of Famer in that fight. So I think he's also like probably as tough as anybody in the world. I don't think he has a weakness, and I'm not sure who else you could say that about.
Right, exactly. And I tell you what, we just saw what Donaire did a couple of weeks ago in winning the world title again. I'd say that was a pretty damn impressive victory for Inoue. I don't know if we'll see the rematch, which leads to my next question. Who would you like to see Inoue face next?
Well, I don't know about the very next fight, but it looks like things are lining up for him to unify at 118. Donaire is going to fight Jean-Riel Casimero, which is also a great fight. They're going to unify 2 titles in August, barring something unforeseen like a draw or whatever. And I think it looks like Inoue is going to get the winner of that fight. I know Donaire wants a rematch. Donaire is the ultimate competitor. He wants to get in the ring with the best fighter in the world, if that's what Inoue is. I'm guessing that Naoya Inoue will be the undisputed bantamweight champ early next year.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see what Donaire sees that makes him want the rematch. I mean, he feels he can improve on what he did. And I also would like to see if that orbital bone is still an issue. I mean, he doesn't look the same. His eye doesn't look the same.
That's interesting. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily tested against, Das Marinas, but who knows what an elite opponent can do. However, I still feel that Inoue's biggest test may be at 122 pounds against the likes of, Stephen Fulton and Angelo Leo and the rest of them. That may be his super fight. We shall see, or maybe it'll be the rematch against Donaire. Either way, that is going to do it for this week's show. Again, guys, be sure to like and subscribe. Hit those like and subscribe buttons for the PBC podcast wherever you're listening. And don't forget, the summer of PBC continues Saturday night on Showtime pay-per-view as Gervonta Tank Davis takes on Mario Barrios in a battle of unbeaten champions in the main event. Again, action begins at 9 p.m. Eastern time on Showtime pay-per-view. We'll be sure to talk about it next week right here on the PBC Podcast.